You're listening to The Central Cast, a podcast for mystics and misfits just like you. The Central Cast is recorded before a live audience every week at our church in Glendale, California. Thanks for tuning in.
Here before I go on any further. So we are going to be talking about what happened this week with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And I want to just begin by quickly saying I absolutely 100% repudiate his assassination. And I think it needs to be said that speech, no matter how vile, bigoted it might be, in my opinion, speech alone cannot be met with deadly force and that level of violent retribution. I don't think we can have a republic, free speech, if we continue down this road. We have to be able to walk the tightrope of calling out and condemning hateful speech without encouraging, celebrating, or justifying acts of egregious, violent retribution like assassinations. This is my take on that. It's a short disclaimer. I think, celebrating, encouraging, justifying such acts of violence at that level can turn us into the very monsters we're trying to fight. All right, disclaimer over. One of the things Kirk's assassination and legacy is bringing up in the national dialogue this week, I think, is this question: what is true Christianity? Charlie certainly called himself a Christian to the nth degree, despite spewing some of those racist, bigoted, misogynist, patriarchal rhetoric you ever heard. He claimed to be a devout Christian. He was actually a member of the Calvary Chapel denomination. How many of you heard of Calvary Chapel before? That's a denomination centered right here in SoCal, Costa Mesa to be exact. They've got 1,800 churches around the country. I think Greg Laurie is involved with Harvest Crusade, all that. Kirk was once asked in an interview, you can find this online, still up. He was once asked, how would you like to be remembered if you were to die? Kind of prescient. And he responded, he took a second, paused, and responded, I want to be remembered for courage for my faith, most of all. So that's how important his faith was for him. And whether he was sincere or not, I have no idea. But he certainly called himself a Christian. And of course, he's being held up as this paragon of Christian value and a great Christian leader for many today. And so a lot of us on the Christian left, this raises the question, was he a true Christian? What is true Christianity? Was he a true Christian or not? I think a lot of us progressive Christians are saying he wasn't a real Christian because he was so full of hate and bigotry. I've heard this argument. And therefore, he practiced a bastardized version of the gospel, a white Christian nationalist gospel that isn't true Christianity. But here's the problem with that. Since when does being Christ-like have much to do with Christianity? We must remember that Christianity, just like any other religion, is often an expression of the culture in which it resides. Like any other religion, it usually takes on the social values, the biases, and the other features of the culture in which it sits within, right? Christianity is highly malleable in this way, just like the Bible is. We all know that you can interpret and cherry pick things out of the Bible really any way you want. And to a degree, we all do. Maybe being a progressive Christian means we can admit that. As part of being a progressive Christian, is that you can actually admit that this is what you do. But the same is true for Christianity. Christianity is incredibly malleable. It can kind of take whatever form you want it to take. We must remember that Christianity, just like any other religion, again, is an expression of the culture. I think it helps to understand that Jesus of Nazareth was not a Christian, right? We know this. He was a Jew. And he, as far as we can tell, had no interest, according to the 4 canonical Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, according to the record we find in there, he had no interest of launching a new religion. Never talked about launching a new religion. He was a Jewish man living in first century Israel, right? He didn't brand his movement Christianity. His disciples and followers decades after he was gone did that. And it's fine that they did, don't get me wrong. And it was probably inevitable that this small Jewish sect would eventually grow and develop and differentiate itself from Judaism. That's fine. But let's be clear. That was they did that. Jesus of Nazareth had nothing to do with that. He never heard of Christianity, right? We know this. So yeah, Charlie Kirk was a Christian, 100%. And we need to own that. As Christians ourselves, for those of us who still identify as Christians, and it's fine if you don't, we need to own, I think we need to own that our tradition is rife with guys like Charlie Kirk. And if we don't own that and admit that, then I don't think we're being honest about the harm that Christianity has and is doing in the world. It's like the popular hashtag, not all cops, right? Hashtag not all police. Every time there's an act of unjust police violence, police brutality, you see this pop up online. Hey, not all cops, right? Hashtag not all Christians plays the same. It comes across as dismissive, comes across as downplaying or ignoring the real harm that Christianity as an institution and body politic has caused and continues to cause in the world. Now, all this raises another important point for me, and it's this. If people like Charlie Kirk are in fact Christians, then Christianity has no single essence that we can point to and say, well, this is true Christianity and that's not. I mean, I think we can argue, I believe we can argue that Jesus' teachings, as we find them in the 4 Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, has some themes that we can clearly identify. I believe that, right? Like love and justice, the uplifting of the poor and powerless, the uplifting of marginalized identities like women and Samaritans, right? And the poor. We can find the theme of Jesus critiquing and bringing down or condemning and critiquing the rich and the powerful. That theme is in there as well. We also find themes of Jesus redefining purity and holiness and redefining religion itself as a way of living in right relationship to others rather than acts of ritual observance of the law and piety. Right? We find these themes. And I don't think that's debatable. That we find these themes in Jesus' teachings in the Gospels. But to say that Christianity as a religion is also always or clearly defined by those same ideas and values, that this is universal and a timeless essence of Christianity or the church, this is just not true. Again, we have to distinguish between Christianity and Christ. As crazy as that sounds, we have to distinguish between Christianity and Christ. Charlie Kirk may have been a Christian, but he certainly, in my estimation, was not Christ-like. And for some, this is why they've renounced Christianity. Not because of Charlie Kirk, but because of, you know what I mean. This is why they've renounced Christianity and gotten away from calling themselves Christians. And I get that, and I support their decision. Now, I still call myself a Christian, perhaps a little bit out of spite. And because Ellie's here, I'll be careful with my words, but you've heard me say this before. I still call myself a Christian in part out of spite because F them, F the fundamentalists and Charlie Kirks of the world who hijack the faith and have taken Jesus' name in vain by linking him with all of this bigotry and nonsense and lies. That's what it means to take the Lord's name in vain, in my opinion, and others. They hijack the faith, and we're taking it back, at least in some small way, in small communities like this one. We're taking it back. Here, now, among ourselves at least, and hopefully among some others. But so I still call myself a Christian, a bit out of spite, but not entirely. Also because Christianity, for me, is too important of an idea to surrender to the evangelical. Jesus of Nazareth, his teachings, his story, his example, his virtues, these are too important of an idea to just surrender to the fundamentalists and say, I guess it's all yours now. I can't do it. So no, they can't have it all to themselves. And that's also why I'm still a Christian. I also want to say that I don't know about you, I was really taken aback this week. I know I shouldn't have been, but I was taken aback by the level of evangelical rage for anyone who had anything negative to say about Charlie Kirk. Never speak ill of the dead, I guess we're told, right? Especially if they're a darling of the MAGA cult and the greater evangelical community. But the level, I don't know if you saw this, but the level to which they came out and immediately lionized him and turned him into a martyr and the patron saint of everything Christian surprised me. It shouldn't have, but it did. I mean, just moments before he was shot, he was spewing lies on the stage about the trans community, saying that they are uniquely prone to committing mass shootings. An astonishing claim. This was normal discourse for him. This was normal discourse for him. He made a habit and, frankly, a fortune out of spewing such lies and punching down on vulnerable communities like the trans community, immigrants, people of color. This was his bread and butter. No question. And I guess I just didn't expect. I know I'm a bit naive. I am sometimes. I didn't expect the level of outrage. Christians just coming out of the woodwork and attacking anybody who had anything negative, just quoting him. You just quote him, and they're like, "How dare you?" It's what? What? I'm sorry. I'm still there. And they wonder why so many of us have left the church. And they wonder why so many of us have departed. They can't understand why we don't want to be in community with people who revere bigots. They don't understand that. They don't understand that thinking. Why we don't want to be in community with people who revere bigots. People who hear someone say racist and horrible things about black and trans folks on the regular and go, "Oh, well, those are just his opinions. And yeah, he's kind of controversial and hits the hot topic buttons, but that's just who he is." And what? Huh? Why would any thoughtful or decent person want to be in community with people like that? They don't get it. And we're the a-holes, right? We're the a-holes for leaving, for calling that out. We're the a-holes for not being okay with that, right? You can't make this stuff up. It's astonishing. This is where we're at. I mean, the level of willful ignorance, hypocrisy, and any semblance of decency has reached epic proportions. And it's just astonishing to me that so many of our family and friends back east, or if you live around here, I don't know. For me, it's all back east. They don't see it in the slightest. In the slightest. And yet they wonder why so many of us have left the church, deconstructed, and even have turned away from calling ourselves Christians. They wonder. They're perplexed. They say of us, "Oh, you must have some deep moral failing, or you must never have actually believed in the first place." Right? You've heard this before? And this reveals their deep lack of self-awareness, capacity for critical self-reflection, and even moral accountability. Really, this is about a lack of moral accountability. But they're Christians. They are Christians. And this is where Christianity is at today in America, and it is a sad state of affairs, and I often wonder where it's all headed. I wonder if we're headed towards a theocracy of some kind. That's what Kirk wanted. He, like many evangelicals, believed in dominion theology, or what's called the Seven Mountain Mandate, and I'll tell you briefly what that means. This is a theological belief that conservative Christians should hold positions of power in 7 key areas of society, including, of course, and with the goal to usher in biblical values, okay? Establish a kind of Christian dominance over society in 7 key areas, meaning, of course, getting as many evangelicals elected to public office as possible on both the state and federal level, having them dominate higher ed, corporate America, and of course the arts as well. Again, to usher in this, whatever you want to call it, messianic age of biblical values, make America a kind of theocratic Christian state. And I feel like we're already halfway there. I do. I feel like we're kind of halfway there already. And I hope we reach a breaking point where we don't go all the way. but we're kind of in this drift into pure insanity and magical thinking, authoritarianism, and theocracy. But I think even if we go further down that road, I still think there's hope. So I don't want to be too, grim. I still think there's hope. Jonathan Rauch, a senior fellow at the Brookings Institute, I heard him this week say this. He points out that historically speaking, fascist systems fail because they're predicated on lies and denying reality. And people can only tolerate that for so long in general. Societies can often only tolerate that for so long. People in general hate living in epistemically toxic systems, meaning where you don't know what's true, you don't know who to trust, you don't know if you can take the vaccine, you're not sure if anybody anywhere is telling you the truth. People in general hate that and have a limit for how long and how far they're willing to live like that, tolerate. We see examples of such systems failing in places like the old Soviet Union and various other places. And again, they ultimately fail because people hate living in epistemically toxic systems where you just don't know what's real or who to trust. People will eventually gravitate towards sources that prove reliable because here's what happens. An example. If you stop vaccinating people for measles, what happens? People start getting measles and start dying, especially children, as we're seeing in places like Texas, right? And people eventually start turning around and saying, hey, what the F, there's kids there, is going on? What is going on? There's kids dying. I thought we weren't supposed to take the vaccine. It didn't work, I was told. We got measles everywhere. It's just insanity. But this is where they reach a breaking point. You can only suspend reality. You can only suspend reality for so long until it hits you in the face. And that's been the downfall of countless regimes throughout history. They get high on their own supply. They believe their own BS, their own propaganda. They lose track of the truth. They become arrogant and they succumb to reality. And in this, I take hope. So don't lose hope. This whole charade, and what a charade it is, historically speaking, cannot last very long, I think, because it carries within it the seeds of its own undoing, but also because of modern technology. In previous generations, it was easier for regimes to suspend reality and keep people in the dark for long periods of time because there was no internet and no smartphones, right? And things like that gave people access to information that couldn't be controlled completely by the state. You've got a piece of technology in your pocket right now that, at least right now, has access to the world and the news in a kind of uncensored way. Don't think they're going to ever take that away from us completely. So that's good. I don't think the modern West can sustain a truly Orwellian theocratic state for very long. But the fact that we even have to talk about this is proof to me that, we're kind of halfway there already. And that's what this week got me thinking about. I don't know. That's my talk for this morning. Was that a sermon? I don't know. Thoughts that this brings up for you. Questions, remarks. Where are you at with your experience this week? What are you wrestling with? Anything goes in regards to all that. We'll talk about the resurrection more next week. Yeah. Oh, Bob. Yeah.
Stopping this a bit. First of all, I appreciate you talking about that. And then there's this whole weird thing. First of all, Charlie Kirk was a real piece of shit. And that just has to be acknowledged.
How dare you, Bob? How dare you?
But I was talking with Emily about this on Friday, and what makes me feel conflicted about it is that I genuinely think the world is a better place without him in it. It's not okay that this assassination took place. And I think that it brings up all kinds of problematic stuff too, because he's been able to be lifted up as a martyr now. And I'm not, no support at all for what happened. I mean, it's horrific, and like you said, it absolutely has to be condemned. But at the same time, there's this aspect to me that just feels similarly like when James Dobson died. I'm like, there's a breathing of a sigh of relief that the language and the rhetoric can't continue from this person. So in some ways, I just feel conflicted in general, and it makes me feel gross to be, to feel like somebody not being here is better for the world. And I'm not exactly sure what to do with that, but it's where I'm at.
Yeah. Thanks, Bob. Yeah, Emily. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I could have gotten up to meet you, but I know it's rare that I talk. Shocking. Except this time I'm going to cry. I'm just going to tell everyone. It's going to go there. Because I have so many things swirling. I accidentally watched the video, and it's really messed with my head. Because also that, Bob, it's horrific. It was horrific, and it was horrific that his wife and children were there. It was horrific that those university children, their children, watched that happen in real time. And then they feared for their lives at the same time. So many terrible things happened within that small amount of time. It was seconds. And it's really messed with me. And then also just seeing that happen, but then also him being a giant piece of shit. Are you serious? And then I think I'm also just so angry, like you said, it's shocking, and it shouldn't be, that people are even saying oh my gosh, you're speaking ill of the dead when you're quoting him. These are things he said. He said about us, the others, right? None of it makes any sense. And really, I didn't realize that things could make less sense than they did the day before. Are you kidding me? Like you said, you can't write this stuff. I don't think anyone is dumb enough, naive enough, ridiculous enough. How do we get here? How do we literally get here? And then it makes me hate the people who are memorializing this guy and putting pictures up of his vigil on their background picture on Facebook. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, for you to do that, it makes me feel like the only thing that I can make sense of is that you believe all of the things that he said. All of them. Because you can't say that you agree with only some of the things that he said when you're memorializing him in that way, because you're honoring, you're trying to respect. But he didn't share that same respect when he was alive. He didn't respect anyone. He interrupted everyone who tried to debate with him. He only debated with university children. When I was 19, I had no idea how I felt. And I was easily manipulated. I was I was pro-life. I was all these things when I was, 19 years old, growing up in a cult-like church. You have no idea what you're talking about, how you feel about things, how you're gonna feel. Your brain isn't even fully developed, and he's arguing with them. He's not arguing with professors. He's not arguing with theologians. He's not arguing with experts in any fields that he's talking about. He's choosing university-age children to manipulate and interrupt and disrupt and say things constantly when they're trying to talk, and he just keeps interrupting them. And some guy said he was a malicious contrarian, and I was like, it's a plan. It's a plan. He exploited everything. He made money on it. So it's not even just that he said disgusting things. His whole Turning Point USA was maliciously made to make money and infiltrate and indoctrinate children to get them to be on their side. It was about power. It's about control. It's just another facet that I just didn't see coming. So I'm angry. I'm angry that I can't post anything without people coming for me about ridiculous nonsense that I then have to argue with. And then I'm like, why am I obsessing about this? Why am I obsessing about this? Because it's so wrong. It's so wrong in every sense of the word. You are wrong. You're wrong. And you think you're right. And you keep arguing that you're right and I'm wrong. And I'm like, my beliefs didn't change, right? They don't change with things that someone said or with someone dying or with we're in a different situation or whatever. Like, I don't now think like the religious right. How about they were so freedom of speech, right? Oh, George Floyd was a criminal. He deserved it. That's freedom of speech. Well, now you can't even quote what the dude said when he was alive. Now everybody's getting doxxed.
Right.
They're getting fired. How is this freedom of speech? You guys flip constantly. It's like, how am I wrong? It's just infuriating on a different level that I honestly didn't see coming. I'm spinning just all week. I can barely focus on anything else. Just spinning out of control.
I know. Yeah. It's okay. Thank you for giving voice to that.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I was just going to say, since it's over here, I think it's really important that to the best of our ability, we come to terms with the fact that American evangelicalism fits like basically all definitions of a cult. And so when you're arguing with someone who still very much identifies in that stream, you can't win. You literally can't win. And I think we've seen a lot of that this week, right? Like the leaders say, this is how you need to respond, right? Share this, we're going to lionize, and everybody just says, aye, changes their profile pictures, posts prayers. And there's no amount of logic that will kind of get through the armor because cults are not come to rationally, right? People don't join a cult because they used a logical set of data, right? And tested it and found it to be true, right? There's no scientific method to get into a cult. It preys on emotion. It preys on vulnerability. And then once you're in, it's within your best self-interest to stay in at all costs. So I say that as a warning, like for us, like that it's really scary. Like, and I think that's a lot of what we're seeing this week is how deep this has really spread, especially for those of us who've been out of it for a long time. Because I think we assumed, at least I'll just speak for myself. I think I assumed over time, it's like, oh, more and more people will kind of realize the gig is up and like be able to get out like I did. And in reality, it's the opposite. Like they have targeted, to your point, they've targeted much younger kids. Like they have gotten into the minds of young adolescent boys, especially teens, and there's a grown army of cultists called Christians, right? Like that's, and like to your point, I try to hold on to that word and fight for that word so much because it's not fair. It's like, I'm not giving you this. You don't get to take this thing that literally tens of millions of people practice around the world that's been practiced for 2,000 years. And your little awful, violent iteration of it, racist, patriarchal, like fill in the blanks, just the worst of us, doesn't get to define it for the rest. And so, but I think in terms of boundary setting, I think it can be really helpful to remember that we're essentially dealing with a cult. And when you're arguing with members that are still a part of that, you're arguing with a cult member. And there's not any level of rational thinking that's going to get them to come out of that or admit that, right? Like you never admit you're wrong. I think Emily even said to me this morning, like someone said, there's no amount of facts that you can give me that will change my mind. And I was like, well, they're being honest at least, like, cause it really is. It's like, you can't. Yeah. So I think I agree in the sense that there's this sense that we can try to shape culture in a counter, in a counter way, but like, yeah, I'm pretty pessimistic. I like you said, we're halfway there. I think we're beyond halfway. And I think it's going to get a lot darker before any semblance. I think you're right though. I think societies cannot tolerate this kind of thing. I think the problem is it takes a really long time to get to that, get to that point. I think she said, she's like, yeah, but how long did the Soviet Union last?
But they didn't have the internet and smartphones.
No, I know. No, it's true. That's true. So things move faster, but just like the concept of like, I don't think this is going to be, everyone wakes up one day and it's like, oh, wow, were we the baddies? Right. The classic clip. I think it's going to be generational. And so like, I think the best we can do is protect the vulnerable, like, and those among us who are going to be most targeted. and try to develop some community systems of protection like that, and be very careful, like who you engage with, because it's pretty scary out there.
Yeah,
I don't mean to
blocked
be
some
overly
folks.
negative.
I blocked some folks this week, which I rarely do. But yeah, Julie.
I blocked some folks too. It was liberating. Just on the very last thing that Max said, thank you for the transition, because I felt like I was going to say something kind of crazy. But as I kind of went down the rabbit hole, and it frustrates me watching the videos because it's like Charlie Kirk is always right. Like there is no way to be right in his presence. And it reminded me of why I changed careers from a teacher of argument and rhetoric to a caregiver, a chaplain, a pastor. And I was thinking about that this week. We are, one of the ways that Charlie Kirks of the world get to us is they draw us into argument as a way of being and as a way of communicating our values.
Mm.
And I was feeling really grateful that we have this other model in Jesus of ways to live out and communicate our values. You might think Jesus spent a lot of time arguing with the Pharisees. He actually spent as little time as he possibly could arguing with them. And usually he sort of was just toying with them, providing a riddle or a question, and then walking away to go care for people.
Mm-hmm.
And so the shift that I've been thinking about in my mind is like that, we follow a God who doesn't say who's right, who's wrong, but who needs taken care of. And that's been the most liberating thing for me. And to see actually putting my energy there instead of arguing as a way of resisting all this bullshit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks, Julie. Thank you. Yeah. Anybody else today? Oh, it's a heavy topic. It's a heavy time. Yeah, Max. Yeah.
Sorry, there was so much there.
Yeah.
Cover that I was trying to remember. I was just going to say too, I think it's helpful to frame. You talked a lot about like the claim of being a Christian and how we can't really decide that, and I agree with that to an extent. I think it's also just like helpful to not just try to counter or debate the idea if he was a Christian or not, but see the point that he was, right? It was fine, like you said, and then ask the question. You and I already talked about this, but then ask the question, okay, let's say that he was. What is it about this particular Christian that has caused you to feel and speak out in a way completely different than any of these other, Christians or not, like innocents, deaths every day, like these losses every day, all these horrific things? Not a single one of those has moved you to the same point as this one person.
Yeah.
And I think that's very telling.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it gets into the part of like, I don't think these are even rational conclusions. Like, I don't think these are intentional ways that people are reacting.
Yeah.
They're literally just reacting in the way that they're supposed to.
Yeah. That's interesting. Thank you. Anyone else? Cool. Thank you, everybody. I feel like people are peeling away to go deal with parking. Or, I don't know. I'm wondering. Yeah. Okay. No problem. Well, let's finish as we always do with our joint benediction and centering affirmation. Centering affirmation. I like that. A centering affirmation at Central. All right. Let's say this together now. As we go from this place, we commit ourselves to the path of love, honesty, and humility. We dedicate ourselves, as Christ did, to the cause of justice and the courageous embrace of this life, this world, and each other. Amen. Thank you, everybody, and thank you to all of you who joined us via Zoom, Randy in Scotland. We miss you. Yeah. Hope you're enjoying Scotland and doing Scottish things. And, yep, see you next week. Thanks for listening in on this week's edition of the Central Cast. Hope you enjoyed it. and hope you join us next time. Bye-bye.